So I want to switch directions now and say, this all sounds great, but there are many challenges to building an organization. What are the challenges that you've seen building and then going again and building and then going again and building? What are the challenges that we should always be looking out for? And how did you get around them?
Okay, well, going through the memory banks over a couple decades, I've worked with companies that have had very different customer bases. And I know that those different customer bases have informed our choices greatly. So,
Mm,
Raisin, typically with the folks that are doing a lot of cash saving, they're a little more affluent, they're a little more mature. Some of them are a little more technically sophisticated, some are getting out of their comfort zone for yield. National debt relief, more of a financially vulnerable audience. They're feeling the pinch. It's why they were looking to NDR for help in order to help them get out of the challenges that they were facing. And then at S&P, this was a business to business transaction serving a lot of financial services professionals, a lot of folks at the analyst and associate level that were more technically savvy, but they had seniors that were chasing them to use that market data and solve problems. The point being that I think the first thing you're thinking about is how do you meet those customers where they are? In the case of Raisin, where you have customers that are used to going into a branch, they may want that personal touch. And that's why when we built out that team, the focus was on email and voice for starters, and eventually adding on chat as a convenience feature. Because that customer, they wanted to speak to a human and feel like they weren't just sending their cash into the ether. That's always been a huge component, is trying to meet your customers where they are depending on who they are. Then you also working in smaller organizations, you never have endless resources at your disposal in order to solve for challenges. So you want to be as technically savvy as possible. You want to hire the best people, but you have to make choices. Just about every adult needs to do. You've got a budget and you've got expenses and you've got things you want. Am I going to go for the better system? How am I going to allocate those resources today? How do I want to allocate them over time? And then how am I measuring the success of those choices in order to say, do I press on with this? Do I make a decision? So I think being smart about resources has always been super important just because you have limitations all the time, and making sure that you have a clear understanding of how well those resources are being used. That's also been a big thing that I've thought about. And then lastly, in these dynamic organizations, sometimes you may think you're going to zig, but the organization is zag. So, for instance, earlier this year, Raisin launched a convenience feature that allowed customers to more easily move between different savings products. It's called the Raisin Cash Account. Now, regardless of what was in the big grand plan, the bottom line is that we had a lot of customers who needed to have their hands held and have explained to them how to use this new feature and why this new feature would benefit them and all of those other things along the way. So, in these dynamic organizations, sometimes you're just told by events external to you and your plan, this is what's coming, this is what you need to prepare for. And that's okay. That's your job as a senior leader, partnering with the rest of the organization in order to create these great experiences.